Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Rachel. I'm the author of A Modern Guide to Human Design, and I also have a site called Peer Generators where I talk about human design, the new paradigm, the age of Aquarius, and specifically the generator and manifesting generator experience. But I also have a lot of stuff for all the types. And today I wanted to answer a really common question for generators and manifesting generators that I got asked recently, which is, what do you do when your job is no longer energizing to you or lighting you up or feeling like a yes, but financially you have to be there, you have to stay there. It's just not feasible for you at the moment to leave that job. And it's a great question. It's something that so many generators and MGs go through. It's definitely something that I went through, honestly, multiple times in my life. So, yeah, let's dig into it. And hopefully, this can make you feel better about where you are if you're going through this, or just shed some light on how your aura works and how to deal with a situation like this. So, let's talk a little bit about waiting to respond and the generator MG way of making decisions. And in this case, if you are at a job that you don't like very much, it's going to be very important for you to wait to respond. Even if you've already realized that this is not the place for you, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the time yet for you to make a move, to leave that job or pursue the business that you want to start or find another job. Just doesn't necessarily mean that even if you're aware of that, that you're quite ready energetically to move on. So why is that? It's because we as generators and MGs are designed to make decisions through response, meaning that we have to encounter something in the outside world that ignites that yes or no feeling inside of us. So I had a career where I was a project manager for 6 or 7 years, and honestly, it was not a bad job for me at all. There were a lot of really great things about it, but at a certain point, I knew that it was time to go and pursue something else. I didn't even know about human design at the time, though I was making decisions with my sacral when I look back at it. And I definitely did not know that I was going to go start a business that had to do with human design when I chose to leave my job. I actually knew for many years during that career that I wasn't going to do this forever. But I really tried not to stress out about that so much because even though I didn't know about my human design and I'm a generator, I'm a 1-3 profile, I had this feeling like I would call it, I was like, there's that thing inside of me that tells me when it's time to make a move. I was like, I need to listen to that thing. And I had some responses along the way where I would have a really difficult client or go through a really hard time. And I would feel kind of a response like, oh, I'm going to go look for another job. So I would do that. I did that a few times. But in the end, I always listened to that inner response that was like, no, ooh, I'm not feeling pulled toward that. Even got offered a new job a few times, but I was like, ooh, there's this thing that just says like, no, stay, stay. So just that awareness that it's not energizing us really isn't enough. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the right time. You could be there for years longer. You could be there weeks. You could be there months. And as sacral beings, which is what I call all generators and manifesting generators, we just have to learn to not see that as a punishment. It just is telling us that there's more for us there. There's something better coming along, that we have to do things at the right time. Making moves at the right time when we actually feel energized for us is so important because that's how we're going to feel that satisfaction and feel good about what we're doing. If we try to force things, it always ends in frustration. So I would say the first thing to realize is that if you're not feeling that clear, obvious path forward, you haven't had that response of like, oh, this is the next thing I'm going to do. Maybe you've had the no response of like, okay, this isn't for me, but you haven't had that response, that yes response towards something else. It's kind of just means that it's okay to be where you are. Maybe you're at the right place still. Maybe this is still the correct place for you to be because you don't quite know what amazing thing is coming in your future. Maybe there's something else to learn here. Maybe there's some gift there that will help you prepare for the future, like the opportunity to save money. Maybe there's a few more things you need to learn and experience to be able to say yes to the next thing for that to appear in your reality because it hasn't yet. This was so true for me because even though I did quit my job, I kept on working for the same company for a couple of months as a contractor with the idea that maybe I would just find another job in the same industry. But I can see why I said yes to continuing to work as a contractor because during that time, I found human design and had that really strong yes response, So it all kind of works out perfectly in the end. It's just we don't always know what the plan is. So I would say number one is you don't have to stress. If you haven't found that next yes, it usually means that there's a way to make this work in the present. There's a way to make your current thing work. If you are a generator, it's going to be particularly hard sometimes to make that transition. As generators, we can be a little bit slower to make moves. We may have awareness of what we're going to do quite a bit before we actually do it. Manifesting generators may be able to make that move, to take that action a little bit faster. So that's just something to keep in mind too, is as generators, it may feel particularly slow. We may feel like we're waiting for a response for a longer time. We may have a yes response to something or no response to our current thing and still not be able to take action. Just because we have a response to something doesn't necessarily mean that we take action right away. So yeah, as a manifesting generator, you might be able to take action on something a little bit faster. And you might worry about being impulsive, or suddenly you're like, no, this isn't for me, this other thing is for me, and you take that action. That's okay. Sometimes you can move really fast and there's nothing wrong with that. So it's really about learning to tune in to your inner authority. For half of you, that will be sacral, for half, it'll be emotional. But no matter what your inner authority is, you still will have that initial response. If you have sacral authority, that response will stay more or less the same. You just have to kind of wait until the right moment to act on it, till the path is very clear. If you have emotional authority, you might have to really allow your emotions to go through that wave and see if you're still feeling that response later when you've seen it from all these different emotional facets. If you need to know more about your sacral response or emotional authority, I have a lot of info about that on my website, puregenerators.com. I have a blog where I have tons of info on that. I also have a lot of paid courses you can check out at a variety of price points that can help you with that. So if you're in that place where you're looking around, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing next. This isn't feeling energizing anymore, but it's just not clear. So I just can't quit. Financially, I can't quit. Here's what my advice would be. If you're a generator, see if you can pull back some of your focus and some of your life force energy. There's this concept that's popped up over the last few years of quiet quitting, where you kind of just don't put your all into your job anymore, but you continue to go there and perform your duties, like your basic duties, and collect a paycheck. Like you're not trying to make that job your whole life. And I would say that's probably pretty much generators and maybe also MGs doing that, because of course we're 70% of the population. We make up most of the workforce. It's kind of speaking to this aspect of our human design, which is that we typically have the energy to still show up and perform tasks, even if it's not something that's ultra energizing to us. But this is going to be particularly important for generators. We tend to want to put all our energy into one thing. I always personally found it very hard when I had a job to be pulling back my energy and putting a lot of my focus in other areas of my life, because it feels good to put your life force and energy into something you're doing. And I would get really involved in it. But a few times I was definitely able to take a look and say, okay, this is not really super energizing for me anymore. I don't think I'm going to be doing this forever. So how can I just stop caring a little bit? How can I stop putting my all into this? Maybe you just don't take on any extra responsibilities. Maybe you just make sure that you're not working overtime when you don't need to, that you're not getting too involved in things that you don't need to be involved in or worrying about them. And that can be a really good way to just pull back a little bit of your life force and leave it so that it's ready for something else. I've definitely pulled back my life force and put that into some new hobbies or some new relationships or planning my next step. So that's a really helpful thing you can do if you can kind of figure out what that balance is for you in your current situation. How can you pull a little bit of your energy back? Still show up, still be doing what you need to do to get your paycheck, but not expecting that job to be satisfying all of your sacral's needs and to be the only source of satisfaction in your life. What are some other things that could bring you satisfaction that you could try to divert some of your energy over toward? And for manifesting generators, I would say you guys have a little bit of an easier time typically splitting your energy between a few things. Most of the manifesting generators in my life, including my husband, he'll have a day job, but he'll also have these other projects, these other hobbies, these other things that he does. And it's very natural for him to put a certain amount of energy into that day job. He also has to have these other things going. So if you're an MG who maybe doesn't have enough hobbies or a side hustle or a project that you're doing outside of the job where you kind of feel trapped, see if you can start to divert some of your energy over to those things. And for you, that very well may grow into the next thing you do or help you find that response. So it's about getting that variety, a different creative outlet, a different way you're making money, something that you can do on the side outside of your current job. What can you do to reduce the amount of time and energy that you're putting into your day job if you're no longer finding that satisfying? I honestly do this in my business too. Sometimes I reach a crossroads where I'm like, this thing that I've been doing for years no longer feels satisfying for me. And while I still need to continue to do it for a little while because I need to find another way to replace that income, I just try to pull my energy a little bit back from that and see if I can experiment in some other things that will bring me more satisfaction and build on that. And in a way, that's actually what I'm doing with YouTube right now. For the last few years, I've been on other social media platforms and connecting with people in that way, but a lot of those are no longer feeling energizing. So I'm trying to still maintain those while diverting some of this energy into making videos over here because it is really satisfying for me right now. And if you really have no idea what your next step is, but you just kind of know that where you are isn't quite it because it's no longer energizing and satisfying for you, try to think about what are some things that you could put in place that would make your transition easier. Would it be saving a little bit of money? Would it be trying to connect with some new people who might have a different offer for you, even if you aren't really sure what that is? So there's some things you can do in the meantime that might set you up for success when you do have that response. I definitely know that having some money saved was so helpful for me when I had a really strong response at my last job where I knew I needed to get out of there. So if there's even like some small things that you could put together, reducing your expenses a little bit, saving some money, it could even be seeing if you can get a raise or a promotion or something in your current situation that would just help you set up yourself for your next response for your future. So that's also something to think about when you're in a situation that isn't working for you. You can also look around and say, is there something I could do to improve this? I definitely did that a few times in my last career where I was like, I would like to learn this other thing. I would like to switch it up. Maybe I can get a better client. Maybe I can work from home a little bit more. Maybe I can join a different team, find a different boss. So I did a lot of that rearranging during that time that made it more palatable to stay there for a little longer because I didn't know exactly what I was going to do next. And I was seeing that as a stepping stone. So you might look around and just see if they're like, notice what is really draining about what you're doing right now and see if there's a way to fix that. And you may find kind of a renewed sense of satisfaction in what you're doing, or at the very least, it will make it more possible to stay there a little bit longer while you wait for that next response and figure out what your desire really is and what the next step is. Another really good thing to do during this time is to think about what do you need to feel good and safe about making this change? I definitely had to think about, how much money do I want to have saved? Is there a skill that I want? Is there something that I need to buy before I leave? For instance, in the year before I left my job, I wasn't really planning on leaving it, but I sort of knew, yeah, I don't know if this is exactly what I'm going to be able to do for a long time. So I saved up and I bought a computer because I really didn't have a computer that I could run a business on or do other work on. So it's really about figuring out what are your needs? What do you need to feel stable? Because if you're in a place where you're really worried about money and about the basics of sort of your hierarchy of needs, the basics of your survival, it's going to be really hard to go from something that's maybe not satisfying to something that's really satisfying, because we always need to take care of those base needs first before we try to jump straight to something that's truly satisfying and soul aligned and all of that, because it's just so important to cover those bases first. If you're feeling really materially insecure in your life, that's a good thing to tackle before thinking about being really satisfied. I definitely had a lot of years where I wasn't doing something that I was super in love with, but it provided me that base to build what I wanted to in my life, sort of financially and materially. It allowed me to get some savings. My previous career, I really felt that I probably wouldn't leave it until I bought a house. I actually left less than a year after I bought my house, which feels kind of crazy now, but that's just how it all happened. Because I think on some level I knew it's going to be so much easier to achieve this financial goal that will lead me to stability before you go into something that's a little bit more of an unknown, whether that's just a different job or starting your business or whatever. So it's going to be different for everybody. You just have to figure out what do you need to feel stable as you move into that next chapter, and you don't have to rush it. It can take a while to figure out what those desires are. So yeah, in conclusion, I would say don't worry so much because there's a reason why you are where you are. What are you meant to get out of this experience? What are you learning? What have you figured out about what drains you, what satisfies you, what energizes you? And how can you take that into your next chapter? You can always trust your sacral to respond at the right time, as long as you're being present and listening to it. And the more that you honor that and the more that you listen to your inner authority, the stronger it'll speak to you because you just develop that trust. So on a daily basis, notice what is making your gut go, ugh, what's making you go, oh, yeah, like this, I lose track of time doing this. This feels so good. And the more of those things you can incorporate into your life, the faster you'll kind of shift out of these environments that feel really unsatisfying for you. Because I can tell you, after five years after leaving my previous job, I so rarely do anything unsatisfying anymore. But it took a long time to get there. And it just involves a lot of learning and knowing yourself and practicing making those decisions in align with your sacral. So, yeah, don't worry. It will all come together at the right time. And when it's time for you to move forward, you'll know because you'll have that energy and the next step will be clear. So thank you for joining me today. Make sure to like and subscribe. Definitely more videos coming. If you have any questions or comments or stories or anything about your personal situation you have going on that you're not sure about, feel free to leave a comment and I'll definitely respond. And I'll see you next time.